Hey, how's it going, everybody? Let's dive into the Google Pixel 9a today and just kind of let you guys know how things is going 6 months later. So, welcome back. This is my 6 month review of the Google Pixel 9a, and yeah, it is a solid and awesome phone. But before we get into all that, if you guys could do me a solid, smash the like button. I would absolutely appreciate that. And if it gives you the option to hype this video up, could you please do me that favor and just hype it, just click it. I would really appreciate it. We'll get more people to see this video, and eventually, like they'll learn about the Pixel 9a and how it's such a solid phone. The reason I'm making this video is because I was inspired by a post yesterday on Threads. Somebody had made a pretty decent post talking about their Pixel 9a and how they feel about it, and I was like, wow, people are actually, looking at this thing the same way that I'm looking at this thing, and that this is not a budget Android phone. This is a flagship. It's a wolf in sheep's clothing. I'll explain why. So keep it locked with this video. Would appreciate that. Anyways, for those that have absolutely no idea about the Pixel 9a, or where I got you, we'll throw the specs up here on the screen for you guys. And so you guys can see it comes in 4 different colors, right? Basically to, make it simple: black, white, light purple, and pink. That's really what it is. What you got? You got a 3.6-inch actual display, 20 by 9 aspect ratio, smooth display from as low as 60 hertz to as high as 120 hertz. Corning Gorilla Glass 3, 2700 nits peak brightness. For the battery side, you got a 5100 mAh battery, which is a beast of a battery in this phone. Memory and storage, basically 128 or 256, depending on which you prefer, and 8 gigabytes of RAM to power the Tensor G4 processor and allow for things to run in background. So it's a decent amount of RAM for basic AI computing. Of course, you want 16 or maybe even 32 gigs of RAM, depending on how much more powerful AI gets. Which, mark my words, in the next 5 years, we're gonna start seeing phones with 32 gigs of RAM. How cool is that? But anyways, you got the Titan M2 security co-processor. It's basically keeps things nice and tight and secure with Pixel devices. And so the 9a does not, skimp out on that. You get, the VPN by Google, and you get the end-to-end security that's designed by Google, as well as, anti-malware, anti-phishing protection, spam protection, and Google Phone and Messages, right? So the cool basic features you get with Android, with the Google Phone dialer, blocking spam calls and blocking spam messages in your Messages app, just all that cool stuff. You get that, right? For the cameras, you got a 48 megapixel quad PD dual pixel camera, f1.7 aperture rating, 82 degree field of view. It's a half inch image sensor size inside the camera sensor itself. That's the main camera. Then you got the ultra wide 13 megapixel. That's f2.2 aperture rating with 120 degree field of view and a 1 by 3.1 inch image sensor size. They tout with the rear cameras. You get super red zoom, up to 8 times zoom, optical, and electronic image stabilization on wide. So yeah, there you go. You have it for the cameras. The front camera is a 13 megapixel selfie, f2.2 aperture rating with a 96.1 degree field of view. So that's nice wide to get some pretty cool shots. And you got all these really cool features right here. You guys can head over to the Google website and see all these features that you get regarding, including video. I mean, there's a ton of things you get. Now you guys are starting to understand why I say it's not a budget Android phone. It is basically a flagship in a cheaper body, because that's really what it is. I mean, when you kind of just look at the Pixel 9a, the only thing you can point out that makes it even anyone say it's budget is a plastic back and the Corning Gorilla Glass 3 display that it has. Other than that, everything about this is just, it performs very good. The Tensor G4 processor, although it's said to be a slightly modified version from the one that you would find in the Pixel 9 and 9 Pro series, you're not really going to feel that when you're using this phone. Doing everyday basic tasks, social media and stuff like that, it's smooth, it's good, it's golden. And even when you're scrolling at 60 hertz refresh, I know a lot of people are really hung up on the numbers, 120 hertz, it has to be smooth. And let me tell you guys, for 60 hertz, it's pretty dang smooth. So just imagine when you turn on smooth display and you actually tap into that 120 hertz, you're really gonna like that. If that's your forte and the most important thing to you. For me, I don't care. 60 hertz, I can deal with that on the phone. I've done it for so many years, so I'm not going to stop today. Um, Aside from that, yes, it does miss the typical Pixel camera bar. I'm okay. I really am. I'm okay with that. Okay, practicality and simplicity with this phone is totally fine by me. To me, this is like for the person that just wants a smartphone to be able to do the things that they do online or what they need it for. They're not really looking for a flamboyant phone that sticks out and says, "Hey, look at me! I'm on the side of the head of this person." You know, it's not discreet because it is a noticeable phone. People will look at this and they'll notice it. Whoa, whoa, what's that? But it's not breaking necks, turning heads. So I can respect that. And of course, the camera sits flush into the body. I can appreciate that. I mean, like literally, look at that. When you look at the camera bar there, you definitely can see it. You look at the Pixel 9a, nada. It is chill. It's flush. It's fine. Either way, it's not going to rock on the table whether you get one with a camera bar, like the Pixel 10, or you get the Pixel 9a with no camera bar. They're not going to rock on the desk. They're pretty good at weight distribution and pressures on the display. So, given that, totally fine. Battery, that's another thing that I do just really want to touch base with, because there's some people that's like upset with this 200 charge cycles activates the battery health assistant, which then reduces the voltage and charging, and begins to also reduce the lifespan of the battery, right? So 5100 milliamps is where it's at. Eventually it'll go down to 58 milliamps, and then 5000 milliamps, etc. You guys get the point. A charge cycle is 0 to 100. So it's not after you've plugged in your Pixel 9a to charge 200 times since getting it out the box does this thing turn on, unless every time you plug it in to charge, it's at 0% battery and you're charging it to 100%. So now you're starting to see where I'm coming with this, is that say you discharge your battery today from 100% and you finish the day and you have 50% battery left and you plug it in to charge. Well, that's half a charge cycle, right? You do the same thing tomorrow and you plug it in at 50% tomorrow night and charge it up to 100% for the next day. That's another half, so that equals one charge cycle, right? So if you're discharging it to 50% and charging it back up to 100%, then technically that's 400 half charge cycles, which equals 200 whole charge cycles. Get the point. This is fractions math, right? Yeah, this is why fractions of math was so important growing up. Now you understand. So if you're charging it down to discharging it to 70%, charging it back up to 30%, that's 30% of a charge cycle. 0 to 100 is where it's at. So it's not after you've plugged it in, into your phone 200 times, it's going to turn on. It's not how many times you plug it in. It's how low are you discharging the battery to recharge it back up to 100%. And you have other things that protect the battery, like obviously you can extend the battery life. With the battery optimization, which only allows it to charge up to 80%, doesn't go beyond 80%, and that's just supposed to extend the life of your battery further if you want to do that. But I can tell you guys though, 5100 milliamp hour battery, this thing kicks major butt in just basically being on all day. It's definitely an all-day phone, no problem at all. And you got the the features like the wireless charging. So if I don't want to plug it into the Type-C port, I can just drop it on my wireless charging pad on my desk and it charges right up. It's got reverse wireless charging, something that we no longer have with the Pixel 10. And then also it supports physical SIM, which we don't have anymore with the Pixel 10 and going into future Pixels, unless you get an international Pixel 10. But other than that, today everything's moving over to eSIM, so the Pixel 9a is the last one to actually have a physical SIM tray, even though it's not the most sturdiest SIM tray. It's still there if you need it. Overall, to be honest with everybody, I've used this for everything. I've used this to record B-roll footage. I use this to vlog. I use this to live stream to Instagram and stuff like that. It is a very, very good phone, and it doesn't cost $1,000. It doesn't cost $800 or $700, right? This thing, $500 at the Google store, and you probably even find it at a more cheaper deal going through other outside sources that if you just do your due diligence, you search online for the deals, you can find some really crazy deals on this. And if you're okay going into the used market, I'm seeing this thing being listed for $250 to as low as $179. So man, can you get a hell of a deal on this? I mean, it is a great phone. And like I said, it's a wolf in sheep's clothing. It's got all of the performances of its flagship brethren, the Pixel 9 and the 9 Pro series, minus a camera sensor from the Pro series, and minus glass. Does glass even really mean that, you know, it's going to perform like butterflies and rainbows? I mean, you guys tell me in the comments. Does glass even really make a difference? I don't know. I absolutely don't know. But what I do know is that it is a phone worth looking at. It is a phone that I would tell you today, you know, since the 6A to the 9A, which is the most current A series device, that is Google's chapter changeover from relying on, you know, budget processor chips and have moved over to what they consider a flagship chip in the form of the Tensor, which is based to be powerful for AI computing, not for Genshin Impact, not for Call of Duty, not for any of that type of stuff, okay? Mainly for AI computing. And the AI that's in these Pixel phones are just out of this world. If you actually take time to play around with it, instead of making generative AI kitten photos,